Hello, allegedly, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulously well, actually.
Fabulously well, because you're in
Um,
sunny St Lucia.
I certainly am, and more than that, we've just been experimenting with making chocolate, and it's been absolutely amazing. Yeah,
You've got to
you know.
watch, Dave. You've got to watch the video I just did yesterday or 2 days ago because we were making chocolate, and I just went back to because I'm in Costa Rica, as you know, and I went back to Ansel, and we did a whole thingy, a chit chat, very natural because the dogs and the chickens got involved, but all about cacao and how important it is, not just about making chocolate. You must watch it. You'll learn so much. It's very much a womanly thing. But
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's about.
I was what 2019.
Oh, you're
I saw
frozen. Is that
some.
your end? Okay,
Oh,
sorry, you just frozen. I don't know if it's your end or my end because yeah, we're the other side of the world here.
hmm.
But 2019.
Yeah. So I was driving down the road, and these bit strange pods. And I said to my mum, what are those pods? She went, cacao. And I went, stopped in the middle of the road. I was like, are you trying to tell me chocolate is growing wild on the side of the road here? And she said, yeah. So we grabbed a couple of pods and we made a little bit of chocolate, and and my idea was, okay, I'm coming back next year and we're going to making, proper chocolate here. But then,
Fantastic.
but then COVID hit, and I didn't get back here for 3 years. And when I got back here, somebody else had exactly the same idea, and they've got a very successful chocolate shop now.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah,
If
but
you
we're
watch,
doing
yeah,
it
if
now
you watch,
anyway.
well, if you watch the video, it tells you the history of it and how cacao is actually regarded as a woman, and those pods are supposed to be her breast. So therefore, and the tree or the cacao is either seen as a very young woman or a very old woman, and therefore it's only women can pick the pods. Otherwise, you're picking the breast of the tree uninvited. So you have to get your mum to pick them if you want good chocolate. But watch the video; it's so interesting. I
I
learned
don't
so
know.
much.
I don't know. I'm a rude guy, so I'll pick them myself because
You're
I
just going to go there, aren't you? But but the other thing which is really interesting, and we will come on to something else, but that's what I say. We do these chats, and it's whatever goes. But the other thing that was really interesting is the pollinator of the flower of cacao. Guess what that is? Da, da, da,
Oh,
I'll help you.
yeah, no idea.
Mosquitoes. Mosquitoes.
Oh,
I
yeah, we've
know.
got a
So we
few of
must have,
those around
yeah,
as
I
well.
know. So you can't kill him anymore because if we didn't have these mosquitoes, then we don't have chocolate. So you've got to be nice to them.
Oh, okay.
There you go. There you
I'll
go.
try. I'll try. I'll try.
Two things I've instructed you to do, and I know you're not good because I still have to bash them. But anyway, so it's lovely to
Mm.
talk to you. Thank you for joining me, Karen, on Wise Women Weekdays. And those of you that are watching this, maybe give it a thumbs up. Any comments, we do respond. People notice that I do get back to you, or to use those that are following this. Any questions, or Dave will respond. So if you have any questions with what we're going to talk about, which I think it is about the Bible, spirituality, I think that's where we're going to be going with this. Now we've done chocolate, but take it away, Dave. I mean, where do we start with this? Because you've made a comment on one of the chats I had with Paul English, who has a lot to say about the Bible, and then you made a comment, and I know you and I have spoken at length at the very beginning, 4 or 5 years ago, I think. You were showing me the ark, actually Noah's Ark, and how it appeared, and you follow the Bible, you follow religion, you follow spirituality, you follow Jesus. What do you follow?
Well, I don't follow religion. I don't follow the JC character. Um, what I did, I was an atheist for 40 years. So I have no experience or exposure to religion, never went to church, never even went to Sunday school, had nothing. Um, I think it was my mum decided that her children should discover and find out what they want to believe in rather than force a religion on them. So yeah, I decided at 13 atheism. Uh, and it wasn't until recently, maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, in the course of this 20-year journey for truth. Yeah, so yeah, just after 9/11, I started waking up to the truth and started, actively truth seeking. I realized that this journey has been actually a journey to find the Most High, because 6 or 7 years ago, I started to look at the Bible, because a lot of the things I was finding out were all pointing at the Bible and saying, it says that in this book. So I thought, well, you know what, I better see what this book is all about. And once I read it, I realized it was a story. It's not a religious book. It's got nothing to do with religion. Religion has co-opted it. And it's a story that hasn't finished yet. We're literally, not in the middle, but near the end of the story now. So instead of leaving it there, I decided to research the Old Testament. I've been researching all this other stuff, so I might as well put those skills that I'd gained over the last 20 years into researching the Old Testament.
So
and what I found.
Can I just come in here, because I'm going to try not to interrupt, but I know questions will arise, partly because when I talk to people, and similar to you, I've never been an atheist. I've always believed there's a God, whether it's nature or there's something more powerful than us. But like you, I've never gone to church, haven't followed the Bible, because I thought it's been written by a load of blokes that have taken things out, maybe added things in, translated it to suit their, but now, because we are in biblical times, and I guess that's what the whole thing is about, if it is, we are following the Bible. What about the people that still say that it's written by a load of blokes and it's been translated? Because I hear that all the time when I try and direct them, because the reason I do this channel is to try and give information to people to help giving them awareness so they can start doing some research. But I'm not very good at articulating how I feel. So when I meet people on a day-to-day basis and I say my thoughts, they say, well, I follow Jesus, but Jesus, it's got nothing to do with the Bible and religion and all this. How can we prove, if we can, that the Bible is God's word, whatever God is?
Right. So the Bibles that we have today have all been translated, as you mentioned. So, saying it's the Most High's word, it's a translation of the Most High's words. It's interesting that there's one book that's been with human, the human population for the whole of human history in one form or another. Right? It's this one book, and it's the Hebrew Scriptures. So, all these religions are based on the Hebrew Scriptures, and all they do is they put their own book on top and combine the two and then weave a religion around them. Now, it's fair to say that, well, this looks like it's just been written by man, but when you look at the language that the book was originally written in, which was Paleo-Hebrew, not the modern Hebrew, but this thing called Paleo-Hebrew. It's an amazing language, and it's a language that you don't just understand the way that we understand languages today. This is a language you feel and intuit, and you know what it means. It's not, like English, where you kind of guess at what somebody is saying. If you want to know how imprecise our language is, explain something to somebody and then immediately say, can you repeat that back to me? Explain back to me what I just explained to you. And you'll see how little they understood of what you were saying. Okay, we don't do that because it's impolite to do that, but you'll realize how imprecise our language is. I don't know if have you heard of my little demonstration of Paleo-Hebrew versus English?
I haven't. Can we hear it now?
Okay. Many of your viewers who've watched some of my stuff will probably know this off by heart now, but okay, so I'm going to describe a film to you in English, and you've got to guess what the film is. Okay. So A man on the autistic spectrum recounts the events of his life to strangers. What's the film?
Oh, I don't know.
Just the first thing that comes into your head.
Say it again. And an autistic man who tries to.
Yes, a man on the autistic spectrum recounts the events of his life to strangers.
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. It's going to be something obvious, isn't it?
All right, so
are
many
you going to
people
say
say
something like Jesus or something?
no. Many people say Forrest Gump, Rain Man, Beautiful Mind, I Am Sam, Awakenings, films like that.
Right.
Okay.
I'd have gone for Forrest Gump. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Okay. So what happens usually in people's minds when I ask them this, okay, they, in the left-hand side of their brain, they listen to the sounds I'm making, right, fetch the meanings of those sounds that they were taught at school, right, and then compare that list of meanings to a list of films they'd seen, and then guess at what film it might be, right? So your guess was Forrest Gump, right? So
yeah.
I'm not going to tell you if that's right or not, right? Because I gave you a whole range and you said is likely to be Forrest Gump. All right, so I'm not going to tell you if you're right or not, but I'm going to tell you the same film in Paleo-Hebrew or an equivalent of Paleo-Hebrew. So I'm going to use emojis because Paleo-Hebrew is a language of little pictograms, little pictures that mean something, okay? So I'm going to use emojis, all right? So I'm going to give you a list of emojis. So, man running, a few trees, a park bench, a box of chocolates, a shrimp, and a boat. What's the film?
That's Forrest Gump, isn't it?
Forrest Gump, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, the difference
if you've watched it, it's not obvious
if you've watched
it,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But the equivalent in Paleo-Hebrew is that every one of those pictograms meant something to somebody in that culture. Okay, so you know, it's I'm making an analogy here with films because most people have seen films. So in this case, the left-hand side of your brain couldn't get involved because it can't analyze pictures. Okay, so all you could do was listen to the description of the pictures and image them in your mind, in your right brain, right? And all of a sudden, you knew what film it was. There was no guesswork. You just knew at some point. It was like, oh, it's obvious. I knew. So it was an intuitive kind of welling up of knowledge. Okay. Now, that was the language that the Old Testament, right, the Hebrew scriptures was written in. Every word could only mean what it means. I mean, that set of pictures can only mean Forrest Gump. It can't mean Rain Man. It can't mean Beautiful Mind. It could only mean Forrest Gump. So every word in that book could only mean one thing, right? And can't mean anything else. And I just, you know, when I do my talks, as soon as I emoji pictures, word pictures, that I get people to translate for me. So they're just film titles. So one would be, imagine a tiger, an Indian man, and a boat. So
yeah,
can you guess that one?
Pi, wasn't it? Pi, I think.
Life of Pi, yes.
Life of Pi, yeah.
Right. So I have a whole list of those, and usually it takes a few seconds to switch their heads around, but all of a sudden they just get them one after the other. And which is, if you think about it, it's amazing because I just taught people a language and they got it without even being, well, I told them about a language and they got it without even having learned it. So that's why I know that there's something to this book, and it's beyond human reckoning, because the language turns out to be the language of creation. And that goes into the fact that this is a thought-based universe.
Okay, I like that, and I like the fact that you've also just created a new game at Christmas. I think we could all be doing that at
Mm.
Christmas. But again, there's no emojis, there's no hieroglyphics in the Bible. It's words that have been, and I'm just thinking of the audio people that are going to think, yeah, but that, you know, there are no pictures. You're not in a cave where somebody scratched a deer or whatever it is, or giants and stuff. It's still words, and it's still been translated, and it's many years old.
Right. This is a thing, and there has been a lot of mistranslations, deliberate mistranslations, in order to so that the book can fit the religious narrative. Okay. Now the thing is, let's go back to the Forrest Gump example. Okay. So in every Paleo Hebrew word has 8 different meanings. Just like I gave you like a group of things to look at, like a park bench, box of chocolates, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So what the translator, the English translator did was look at those 8 different meanings and chose one of them. Okay. So going back to the Forrest Gump example, right? If I was trying to describe Forrest Gump to you, would you get it if I just said park bench?
Well, actually, I might do, but yeah, but you
You
need
might
more,
get
of course.
something of it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
might get
yeah,
something of it, but you wouldn't
yeah.
get the full meaning. Yeah, it's the same thing. So the English translators see 8 different meanings, they choose one, rather than taking all 8 together and getting the intuitive feeling about what it means. Yeah, so they turned it into a left brain process that, okay, they've chosen one meaning and so on, but they all choose the meaning that will best suit their narrative. But the great thing is that it's a word picture. Every letter is a word picture in Paleo Hebrew. Every word is a word picture. Every sentence is a word picture. And the whole book is a word picture. Okay, so you can translate or try and translate away the meaning, but you can't translate away the word picture.
Okay. That makes sense. I get that. Okay, I get that. I don't know if anybody's watching this still don't get it, but do comment and we'll get to that. That makes more sense. So you're using your intuition. You're going with your gut feeling, and people can add words, take words, but the meaning is still there. That can't be removed. What
Yes,
about
and
other? A little monkey in the tree. Sorry. What about other religious books then? Okay, why is the Bible, the book of scriptures, which I understand from Paul English means contract, why is it different to the Quran? Is it superior to the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or the Torah or any of these other ancient scriptures?
right, so it goes back again to my looking at the languages that, you know, there was an original language of mankind, which I've since found we know how to speak when we come into this world. We know how to speak Paleo Hebrew. I've got a whole video called The Language of Creation where I go through it. But we know how to speak this language. And that was the one world language at one point. And all of a sudden, through this event, the Tower of Babel, everybody scattered with different languages, with the same stories, but they, you know, different languages, different names for things, and so on. So I'm positing that that the Hebrew scriptures were the first. Okay, everything else branched off of that. And in the so-called Abrahamic religions, they all branch off directly from the Hebrew scriptures. So the Muslims will look at I think Deuteronomy 18:18, I think it is, and that says, "A prophet shall be raised from among thy brethren," and they'll say, "Oh, that's Muhammad." Okay, the Christians will look at that same verse and say, "Oh, that's Jesus." But it's neither of them. It's actually Joshua, right? And it's obvious it's Joshua, but the religions will say, "No, no, that is our guy." Yeah. So they create their own book, put it on top, and connect them, and say this is all one book. and they weave that religion around it, right? So
So all
the
the other
Quran goes
ancient,
on top.
okay, all you're saying all the other sacred or ancient scriptures stem from the Bible. The Bible kind of came first, and they've all followed. Is that kind of what we're saying?
Yes, to a larger extent, there is a possibility that there were ancient writings before the flood that were discovered, but they're telling you about other things, you know. But that's a whole different story.
Okay.
So what I've been able to piece together, right, but from this story, is that the first lines of the Old Testament, right, you know, in the beginning, Most High created the heaven and earth, right, full stop, right? There's a full stop there. Essentially, there isn't in the Paleo Hebrew, but we put a full stop there, or we should put a full stop there, right? Then the next line is, if you translate it, what I would say correctly, it should say, but the earth had become ruinous and empty. So that kind of suggests that there was an amount of time between the first sentence and the second sentence. So the Most High created heaven and earth, stuff happened, and the earth became ruinous and empty. Now, again, the way this language works, when you use a particular phrase, right? If you see it somewhere else, it's either referring to the exact same event or something extremely similar. So the only place you see those two words together, ruinous and empty, is in Jeremiah, where it says, you know, the Most High destroyed the earth because of his furious anger, and all the cities were broken down, and the earth became ruinous and empty. So I'm saying that this, you know, in Jeremiah is talking about what happened in the beginning. Yeah, so there were cities, there was another civilization before the period of the Bible, right? And the Most High, well, this civilization fell into wickedness. The Most High destroyed everything and broke the cities down. And we do see cities older than 10,000 years old all over the earth, right? And I think we see even more than that. We see cities that haven't been broken down, yeah, but our generations have gone along and colonized. Yeah, they didn't build them, they're already there. Anyway, so what I've pieced together from the other books like the Quran is that there were previous civilizations before the time of the Old Testament, and they were being governed, the people there were being governed by an angel, a very particular angel. And as I said, the inhabitants fell into wickedness, everything got destroyed. And then the time of the Bible starts, the whole thing starts again, but this time the Most High created essentially an offspring, Adam, okay? And Adam was supposed to be the immortal governor of earth. He was meant to be immortal, okay? You'll find that in a book that was taken out of the Old Testament called The Wisdom of Solomon. It's in the Apocrypha, which was part of the original King James 1611 Bible, but was taken out in any later version. Yeah.
Why?
But
why was it taken out?
The word Apocrypha means hidden. So it looks like it wasn't meant to go in the King James. He put it in, and they were like, "Whoa, no, take it out, take it out." Right. So yeah, Apocrypha means hidden. Doesn't mean, you know, not real or anything. So there's a lot of there's 14 extra books in the Apocrypha, and virtually every one of them will give you some amazing information that you wouldn't find in the rest of the book. So
what about, talking of Bibles and bits that have been put in or taken out? Everybody says read the King James V. Why are there so many versions? And I mean, is that the one that you would suggest to read, James V Bible?
No, I would suggest read the original, the King James 1611. So
I
that was
haven't heard of
when
that. Okay.
now that was the original one. It was the one that he authorized, and later versions started to take things out and retranslate so that it would better fit the narrative. Um, so um, so Adam was meant to be immortal, okay, and there were two creations. So you look at Genesis 1:26 and 1:27. It said, you know, it said God created men and women. Men and women created he them. Okay, so in 1:27, the word God is Elohim, right? Which is a Hebrew word. And when you look up what this Hebrew word means, it's the plural of El, which is a Canaanite god, but it also means angel, and it means mighty man, God with a little g, man worshipped as a god. And they slipped in God with a big G, but I think that was added. But if again, the Forrest Gump example, it means mighty angel worshipped as a god, or in other words, a fallen angel. Okay, so an angel created the first beings, men and women, males and females. Okay, before Adam, because this was on day 6. Males and females were created, and they were instructed to go forth and multiply, spread out over the world and dominate it. Yeah. Some point after day 7, Genesis 2:7, Adam was created, and he was told to stay in the garden. So you got two different creations, actually by two different creators, because in Genesis 2:7 it says the Lord God created Adam. So the Lord of the angels created Adam, right? So the Most High created Adam, the angels created the pre-humans or Neanderthals. Yeah, so two creations, two different creators, okay? Now, when Adam was created, the angels were told to worship Adam as though they would worship the Most High. And it seems, again, looking at the Quran and other books, it seems that the angel who was the previous governor of Earth didn't like it. He said, no, I was here first. I'm stronger, I'm more powerful than this mudman you've created. Yeah, I'm not going to worship him. And he started a rebellion. Okay. Now, the first attack on Adam, right, by these rebellious angels was the story of the apple in the garden, right? Got nothing to do with fruit, right, at all, right? And the whole book has got nothing to do with anything else but bloodline and relationships. Okay, so the story of the angel in the garden, right? It wasn't a talking snake; it was an angel, right? And if you look in again, one of the books that was taken out, the Book of Enoch, it tells you point blank. It says it was an angel, and even tells you his name, right? Gadriel. Okay, so an angel seduced Eve, who had no idea about sex, because so the angel showed Eve, seduced her, had we know that when you have an orgasm, there's a release of energy. And I believe that energy release would have prevented them from staying immortal. Eve went to show Adam what to do. He lost his immortality. What happens when you've got children, right, of 8 or 9, 6, 7, 8, who are running around naked because they don't care, cover themselves up? Yeah, It's the same thing. It's that's what happened. It wasn't about eating apples. It was about corrupting these immortal beings, innocent immortal beings, with this idea of sex, right? So they lose their immortality. So now then, Adam and Eve aren't immortal anymore. Plan B, essentially, it's no longer going to be Adam, the immortal governor of Earth. It's going to be Adam's offspring, who are the governors of Earth. Okay, so that led to the second attack on this bloodline. So that was in Genesis 6:4, when 200 angels came down on the earth and started having sex with human women, right? In order to destroy the bloodline, to corrupt that bloodline, right? And it nearly worked. These angels and their offspring, who are called the Nephilim, they mixed with mankind so much and injected their wickedness into mankind so much that the Most High had to wipe the slate clean again, because there was only one man left who wasn't corrupted by this blood, right? Who still had the original blueprint of Adam, right? And that was Noah. But Noah had to ended up marrying this woman. It turns out she was of the line of Cain. Long story, but so he married the woman from the line of Cain called Naamah. So Noah's children, Noah's 3 sons, were all corrupted. Okay. A week before the flood, Noah had to find wives for his 3 sons. And the only women that were available were corrupt women. So the Nephilim DNA got the other side of the flood through the DNA of the children. And you'll find that the post-flood part of Genesis is the Most High sifting the bloodlines to get back to the original bloodline of Adam. So out of the 3 sons, Shem was chosen because his was the cleanest blood. And out of Shem's 5 sons, Arphaxad is chosen. And there's, this particular line of people that the Most High is concentrating on. And there's every so often there's a chosen one, right? And I think it went to a guy called Eber, that's where you get the word Hebrew from. And then another chosen one was Abraham, and Abraham was sold to marry his half sister, right? Sarah.
Okay. Before we go down all these different names, firstly, you haven't mentioned, talk about fallen angels. You haven't mentioned Lucifer. So is he part of this?
Well, Lucifer is a Latin name, right? The name that was given in the Book of Enoch was Gadriel, right? And Gadriel was amongst the fallen angels. So, the names again, they change as people spread out and from the Tower of Babel. But we'd recognize the names of these angels. As Zeus, Apollo, Diana, or Jupiter, and Saturn, or Ra, and Anubis, or all the gods of all these other nations. They're the same characters, just with different names. Okay, slightly different backstories. It's the same fallen angels. Yeah.
And also, sorry, interrupting here, because I have these questions. So you also mentioned about Abra as we're going down the bloodlines. Firstly, what are the bloodlines? What race are we talking about here? Because when I talk to Paul English, he will talk about I think 12 or 13 tribes that leave Judah or Judea, whatever it was called in those days. And they go off to various places like the Caucasus Islands, and hence we have the Caucasians. And then he also talks about the Hebrews, or the Hebrides. So is that linked into this story as well?
It is. I'm kind of getting to it.
Right? Okay. Sorry.
So no, that's right. So we're at Abraham, right, at this point. And Abraham was told to marry his half sister. again, keeping the blood pure. Okay. Sarah couldn't have children, so but she wasn't part of this bloodline plan. So the offspring of Abraham and this Egyptian woman, Hagar, was Ishmael, right? But he wasn't chosen, right? Oh, gosh, my camera just went weird.
Yeah, it did. But you have obviously the chosen one, because zoomed into you
Yeah,
then.
hang on, I've got to talk to my camera. Hang on, zoom out further. Okay, doesn't work. Anyway.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, so Ishmael wasn't chosen because he wasn't part of this bloodline. But Sarah had a child at 90, right? Isaac, and he was chosen because that was the right bloodline. So when Isaac had children, he had two twin boys. Something different happened. All the fallen angel or Nephilim DNA was concentrated in the firstborn, Esau, because when he's and the Nephilim, he was wicked, he was bloodthirsty, cunning, all this stuff, right? So all that fallen angel DNA was concentrated in him, but it was absent in his twin brother Jacob. So now Jacob was purified. He was back to the original bloodline of Adam, which is why all his 12 children were now clean. They were now the chosen ones. So they weren't chosen because they were special in any other way than they were the original blueprint that the Most High started with, right? And that's what he wanted to get back to. So yes, just like Paul English says, there were 12 tribes, 12 or 13 tribes of Israel or Jacob, right? But you also had this other tribe called the Edomites, right? The sons of Esau. Now that's the battle that we've been in ever since that time, right? The Edomites were supposed to, because he was the firstborn, he was supposed to inherit the earth from Isaac, but Jacob did instead. So that rivalry, right, is what's been going on for thousands of years. And the Nephilim bloodlines, right, that came from Esau mixing with the other Nephilim bloodlines. So you've got the 12 or 13 bloodlines of or tribes of Israel. You've got the 12 or 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, equal and opposite. And that is the battle that's been going on. And it has been a war because the Illuminati, they've been trying to exterminate Jacob's children, right? So that they can inherit the earth by default. But the Most High will not let that happen. He's punishing Jacob because if you read through the Old Testament, Jacob's children entered into a blood covenant with the Most High. Yeah, that's Exodus, right? He entered into a blood covenant, and that covenant was, keep my commandments and you'll be blessed. If you don't keep my commandments, you're going to be punished. And if you go through the story of the Old Testament, you'll see that the Israelites kept messing up. They kept breaking the commandments left, right, and center. I think they did it sort of 6 times. And the 7th time is outside of the Old Testament, happened after the Old Testament ended. And they went into captivity, because they went into captivity every time they messed up. So the last time they messed up, they went into the worst captivity ever. And that is written in one of the prophecies given to Abraham. It says, know for a surety that your seed will go into slavery and affliction for 400 years. Okay, slavery and affliction. So we can actually figure out where we are in the book just by looking at who has gone into slavery and affliction for 400 years. And it turns out to be one particular group of people. And, you know, if that group of people, if that slavery and affliction is correct, then that slavery and affliction, which would end in the last days, right, ended August 21st, 2019. And yeah, that is when it ended, because as soon as we hit that date, all hell broke loose on earth, and it's still breaking loose. Right. The next line of that prophecy is, it says, that nation, the nation that put them into slavery and affliction, that nation shall I judge, and afterwards they're going to leave these lands and go back to their own land with great substance. That's the next line. Okay, so as I said, that slavery affliction ended August 21st, 2019. Straight after that, all hell broke loose. And
Okay.
we are in the judgment of the nations right now.
The end times. Now, because there's all these names, I've tried to make a note of it. So you're saying Jacob, hang on, he's the goody. Yeah, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
So, and he, and who, whatever represents Jacob, is going into slavery and affliction. And then the baddies are going to pay. But you just said they're going to be taken off and have a nice time, didn't you? You said they're going to be taken off and I can't remember what you said, but I thought that sounds all right.
Okay, so the Israelites, right, the Jacobites, right, are going to go into slavery and affliction, and after the judgment of the nations, they're going to leave those lands that they've been scattered to with great substance. Okay, that's how it's written in the book.
Okay, so that the Jacobites, the goodies. Okay, so let's talk about the race then, because when we talk about the Israelites, are we talking about Christianity? Are we talking about Jews? Who can we break this down? And I don't know if we've got to be careful in what we say here.
Right. So
I don't know if
the ones
we might not have, by the way. You can say what you want, but because yeah, I'll leave it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to get at.
I understand. I understand. The ones that are saying they are the people of Jacob, yeah, the tribe of Judah, yeah, of the Edomite stock. Yeah,
Dave,
they
you
are
just
the
froze
ones.
then. You just froze. Sorry, it has frozen a couple
Okay.
of times, but that was a really important bit. You said those that are the tribe of Judah. So then what did you say?
Yeah. The ones that call themselves, you know, the Jewish people, who say they're of the tribe of Judah, of the line of Jacob, they're not. They're imposters. Yeah, they're pretending to be so they get blessed essentially. And that's what's happening. They're being blessed by people all over the world, sending them money and arms and whatever. But they're not the people. Okay, they're actually of the Edomite stock, the enemies of the real people. So the book actually says that the Israelites, their whole memory, the memory of them will be erased off of the earth, right, until the last days. So it also says that people are going to be amazed. Right? It says again in the Wisdom of Solomon, when people find out who they are, they'll be amazed at who they are. They'll say, "It can't be these people. We didn't really regard these people very highly, but how can they be the children of the Most High?" So have you got any idea who they might be?
What, the actual children of the Most High?
The Israelites, yes.
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, I think I have, yeah.
Who do you reckon they are?
Well, I think, isn't it? I don't want to say it because I don't want to get embroiled in all this racist stuff, which I know when you talk to Paul, he just says it. He says people are more frightened to say racist than rape, you know. But I thought it's Caucasians. I think it's the Caucasians. I think it's the white-skinned, blue-eyed, brown-eyed people. From what I'm learning, only from what I'm discovering now. But and I'm also saying that
Well,
not that we're superior to anybody else. It's just we all have a job to play, and that's the job. But am I wrong?
I would say you're wrong.
Okay.
Okay, uh, because again, there is one people who've just literally just coming out of 400 years of slavery and affliction, right? And those are the so-called African Americans, the West Africans who are in the same slavery and affliction, but it was called colonialism, and
Okay.
those people who are in the Caribbean, right? Um, there's a okay, so in the Old Testament, when Noah was born, okay, Noah was an albino, right? It describes Noah, his birth. It said, you know, his skin was whiter than snow and redder than a rose, so pink. Okay, his eyes lit up like the sky, the morning sky. So I'm going to say his eyes were blue, right?
You are going to say his eyes are blue. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know his hair was white, so it could have been white or it could have been blonde. Yeah, equivalent of white. Yeah.
Yeah.
But his father Lamech was terrified when he came out. He said, "This doesn't look like my son. He says he looks like one of the children of the fallen angels, the Nephilim."
Yeah.
Now that's in the book of Enoch, and that's part of the reason why the book of Enoch was taken out. Yeah. So I'm not saying the white people, all white people are Nephilim. I'm saying that there was a small bloodline of white people who are the children of the Nephilim, okay, or are the Nephilim, right? Now, if you look at Benjamin Franklin, he wrote an essay back in 1751 called Observations on the Increase of Mankind. And in it, he said that all of Asia is black or tawny, all of Africa is black, all of Europe in Germany,
You froze.
England.
You froze.
Oh,
All of Europe.
okay.
All of Europe.
All of Europe were black,
Okay.
except for Saxony in Germany, England, and the newcomers in America. He said they're the only white people in the whole world. Okay, so I'm saying that this is the original white bloodline. Okay, now Saxony in Germany is very interesting and important because do you know where the word Saxon comes from?
No.
It actually comes from Isaac's sons, the sons of
Okay.
Isaac, right? So
Okay.
if you remember, Isaac had two sons, Esau and Jacob, right? But if you remember, sons
Go
and
back.
the
If you
Anglo,
remember. Sorry, it keeps
oh
freezing. I don't know if it's your end or my end. You know, we're the other side of the
yeah,
world. But yeah, you said if you remember.
yeah, there were two types of Saxons. You had the Saxons, the original, and the Anglo-Saxons. So you had the sons of Isaac, and you had the angelic sons. So you had the original who were Esau. Now, one of the books I started reading was Origins of the Anglo-Saxon Race. Okay, by I think it's by Thomas Shaw, and on chapter 7 of Origins of the Anglo-Saxon Race, chapter 7 is called Our Darker Forefathers, where it talks about their forefathers, the Saxons, who were black. Okay, also indicating that Anglo-Saxons are white. Okay, so Saxony in Germany is where the Saxons and the Anglo-Saxons came from. So this country in particular, and that's where my research kind of centered on, this country was first colonized by Saxons, right, black and brown people, and then invaded from a place called Jutland now, right? It's I think that's Denmark, right? Which was part of Saxony at one point, right? That was the home of the Angles or Anglo-Saxons, right? And so they came over, colonized this place, and called this place Angleland, Angel Land, yeah, the land of the fallen angels, right? It was originally Britannia, right? Now, Britannia is a Paleo-Hebrew word. It means land of the covenant, right? Land belonging to the people of the covenant, covenant with the Most High, yeah? So the black and brown people who were here before, right? So the British Isles were black islands, okay? Because the original Irish people were black people. And actually, I can show you the progression of where they came from. So there were a people called the Iber. Now, you remember I mentioned one of, Iber, right? I mentioned, Iber, right? Yeah. Now, I mentioned one of the progenitors was Eber, right? Eber is where you get the word Hebrew from. Iber is just a contraction of the word Hebrew. And you find also the same word in Africa, the Ibu or Igbo, yeah, or the Ivri or the Yebia or the Evre, right? So, for instance, the Ivory Coast doesn't mean it's got tusks. It's the Ivry Coast, right? Which is, I, B's and V, I'm sorry, B, V's and W's are interchangeable. Right? Because you've got Germanic people and Canaanite people who can't pronounce certain words. So like Germanics can't pronounce W's, we will kill you, yeah? The Canaanitish, like the Russians, they can't pronounce V's. So instead of vodka, they say wodka or vodka, yeah? So B, V's and W's are kind of interchangeable. So the Iber ended up moving to Spain and Portugal, which they named after themselves, the Iberian Peninsula. Yeah. Some of those people left. Some of those people left there. Okay. So these black Hebrews, yeah, because it's in their name, they left there and they colonized another country, which they named Hibernia. Yeah, again, after themselves. That's Ireland, right? Some of those people left from there and colonized a new land, and the only name that survives is Hebrides. Yeah, so Iber, Hibernia, Hebrides. Yeah, you can follow how people move across the landscape because the convention was to name a place after the people. Yeah. So the original Irish were black people. And even though that history has been whited out, you can still find evidence of it in places. Like, the Irish themselves will call some of them Black Irish, the Black Irish. Right? In fact, when my parents came over from the Caribbean, right, in the 60s, they would see signs that said, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And I wondered, okay, why are the Irish treated the same way? That's because, okay, so the Irish were black people. What happened was the last black king of the United Kingdom, right, was Charles II, the Black Boy, as he was known, right? He was deposed, right, and he was replaced by a Germanic white bloodline, right, William of Orange. Okay. Now, when that white bloodline took the throne, they sent their attack dog to exterminate the Irish and the Scottish, Oliver Cromwell. Okay. Now, Oliver Cromwell's task was to literally exterminate the Irish. So he killed as many Irishmen as he could. And those he didn't kill, they transported to their new colony in the Caribbean. Right. So Jamaica and Barbados and a few other places, Montserrat. Okay. So the population of Ireland went down by 40%. Essentially, all the men were gone, right? So they were either killed or transported to the Caribbean, okay? So how does a population of black women continue if there's no men? Well, Oliver Cromwell couldn't pay his soldiers, so his soldiers were given lands over in Ireland, right? And if you've seen Braveheart, there's that section in Braveheart where the guy goes, the king says, the trouble with Scotland is it's full of Scots. Well, he actually meant full of blacks, okay? So I'm going to institute an old custom, prima nocta. So whenever a common girl, a black girl, is married, our nobles will have sex with her on the night of her wedding so that the offspring is going to be mixed, okay? So you know, in Ireland, right, there were no men left. So the offspring were always going to be mixed. So the lighter skin got to stay, the darker skin got transported, right? So you do that for 300 years, what do you end up with? Right? You end up with a population of white people in Ireland and lighter people going over to the Caribbean, who ended up getting the overseers jobs because they were creating a caste system over there.
Yeah, yeah.
So even though the Irish were white-skinned, they still had the stigma, right? It's called the one-drop rule. 1 drop of Negro blood makes you a Negro, yeah? So even though they were white-skinned, they still had the stigma of being black. So when they came into England, the English would still regard them as if they were still black. So that's why there's always been an affinity between Irish people and black people. In fact, there's a racial slur in America for a black person, it's smoked Irish. So literally the Irish only became white in 1940. Right?
Wow.
Until then, they weren't considered white people, right? So, and I've got there was a book that I found. It was apparently there's only two copies of this book left in this country. When I say this country, I mean England. I ended up going to the British Library to get it out. I ended up in the reading rooms of the British Library laughing my head off. You know? Quiet room, because it had proof. The book is called Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica, and it was a guy, it was a reverend, Joseph J. Williams. He was spending time in Africa, and then he went to Jamaica, and he looked around and he said, well, these Jamaicans are very different from the Africans I just left. They've all got these pure Irish names. How did they all get these Irish names? So he looked at the land registry records because he assumed they got their names in slavery. He looked at the land registry records. He couldn't find a single Irish name, which makes sense because these were English colonies. So at the time, they were at war with Ireland and Scotland. So there won't be any Irish or Scottish landowners, right, at the time. So he couldn't find any of these Irish names. So he went back to England and looked at Oliver Cromwell's records of who he deported. He found all the names. So literally, these black Irish people were transported en masse with their names intact. And that's the proof.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting.
Also some...
Yeah, go on. Well, no, I'm just saying, yeah, but no, carry on. I'm just thinking of the time, but it's so fascinating because I think we should carry on with this maybe. Well, I'm sure there's more. You carry on. Don't want to interrupt. Sorry.
I'm just going to add, as I said, there's sparse evidence. There's a ship's manifest that survived from a ship called the Veteran, and it was taking political prisoners or Jacobites. Have you heard that phrase, Jacobites? Yeah. Well, Jacobites. You know, the people of Jacob. So Jacobites were political prisoners who wanted a return of the black bloodline to the throne. So anybody who wanted that were transported, and they would usually be black people. Anyway, in this book, it's called Jacobite Gleanings, right? It's a ship's manifest from the book from the ship, the Veteran. And in it literally has the cargo, which are prisoners, and it describes, gives you all their names, a physical description, and what they did, yeah, and what their jobs were. So you'll find among all these names, English and Irish names, right, and some Scottish names, right, but they were described as black people, very dark, very black. And this one's as carpenter, this one as a poet, this one was, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
But all this information's been hidden. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I interrupted.
Well, no, I think it's fascinating because I've not heard it described like this. And obviously, you being a black man, it's very, you must be very passionate in digging out this information and bringing it to the fore, because it's not talked about, and it's just so interesting. But I think it conflicts a little bit with what Paul says. I think it does, because he's saying that it's the white Caucasians, and you're saying it's the black skinned people. And you look at pictures of Jesus over the years; they've made him white with blue eyes, haven't they? But he was a Palestinian, or he was I don't know, be careful what I say, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't a white guy with blue eyes. I'm sure he had dark skin with brown eyes. Who knows? I wasn't there.
No, well, this is the thing. It is what became passion with me, because again, I had no idea of any of this at all. But I'm a Murphy. My second name's Murphy.
Irish,
where did I get that?
Again. Yeah.
Yeah, where did I get that name from? My dad was from Barbados. Yeah, and if you listen to the Bayesian accent, right, it is pure Irish. It is the Irish accent. Okay, the people who are living in Ireland right now, and I hate me saying this, they're Germans. They're not Irish at all. They're German descendants. Because the English are Germans. Yeah, that's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's also, you look at our royal family and the mixed bloodlines, whatever. That's for another day. As I say, I'm not very good. I can get myself into a bit of mess because I kind of intuitively know what's going on, but I can't put it into words, and I cock it up. Can we end? We can do another one of these. I'd love to get you and Paul talking, maybe go on his show or something. But can you tell us, because you're saying we come to the 21st of August, and we're in biblical the end times. What do you think is going to happen then? If we can read it, if this is a prophecy, Nostradamus and whoever else is telling us what's happening, have we got a date when it's all going to kick off?
No date.
Okay. Oh.
Apocrypha.
Hang on, sorry, Dave, you froze again. You said no date,
okay.
And then you got no date.
Yeah, there are markers, right? There are physical markers to look at. So the fourth book of Ezra, and he's told about what the future is going to look like, and he talks about a time where the whole earth is going to be taken over by a three-headed eagle, right? So the Edomites that I was telling you about, their symbol is the eagle, and you can follow that eagle around the world where they've conquered. Wow. Yeah, so the Roman eagle, yeah, and there's also a Greek eagle. You had the German eagle, and now where's the eagle today?
Where is the eagle today?
What country symbolizes America? Yes. All right. Yeah. So it's a three-headed eagle, right? It's saying, so the body is of the eagle. So it's saying that this bloodline is going to have three heads. So there's, right in this world today, this bloodline has three power bases. Vatican City, which is the control of the religious, religions of the world. You got
and the
money, City of London.
Money.
City of London is a center of monetary control, and you've got Washington D.C., which is a center of military control. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that is the three-headed eagle, and Ezra tells you that the middle head, the most powerful head, I'm going to say that's America, right, is going to disappear without a fight. Suddenly disappear without a fight. Now that connects in with looking at predictive programming. That President Trump, and I've been saying this for at least 5 or 6 years, President Trump is going to be the last president of the United States. Okay, and I don't know if you know about the books from 1900, the Marvelous Adventures of Little Baron Trump and The Last President.
No. No, you've frozen again, so hopefully I can speak. You froze again. Isn't that the son's name? Isn't Baron his son?
Yes,
okay.
it
And
is.
there's books. There's books in the 1900s that talk about these people. You say
there's a book, and I'm blanking on the name of the author now, but there's a book by a particular author called The Marvelous Adventures of Little Baron Trump. But the other book he wrote was called The Last President, and in that book it talks about the election of a very unpopular president that nearly causes a civil war, right? And it describes exactly what happened with President Trump, his first election. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm saying, okay, he's the last president. So in Trump's term, America's going to disappear.
So within 4 years, because you've frozen again, but within 4 years, because that's his term, isn't it? But also, I think it's become very apparent, and I always like to put this in my little chit chats, because a lot of people are thinking, yeah, he is a savior because what he's doing is putting things back to normal. There's only 2 sexes and all that sort of stuff. But on the other hand, he's he's gone back to being the godfather of warp speed, isn't he? Trying to do that. So that's probably going to infuriate a few people. And he is trying to globalize the world by taking Greenland and Canada and the Gulf of Mexico. So he's going around the back door. We think, oh, he's a really nice guy, but behind the scenes, goodness me. So yes, interesting times.
So, but here's the thing though. I mentioned that there's going to be a second exodus. We're going to leave their land, the lands they were scattered to, with great substance. Well, that's going to have to happen. If I'm right about who the Israelites are, that's going to have to happen before America disappears. And what do we see that Trump is doing and has been doing, right? He's instituting mass deportations, right? Of right now he's calling them illegal immigrants. But when he first came in, he changed the law so that to be considered an American citizen, you're not necessarily an American citizen if you were born there. So it's laying the groundwork for Trump to turn around and say to all the black people there, out you go, leave. We're gonna deport you, right? Which to me sounds like an exodus. Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm saying, and I'm not a prophet or anything, I'm just looking at all these bits and pieces, and it's showing me that at some point in the next 4 years, Trump's going to deport all the black people out of the country, in order to make America great again. Yeah. Forgetting that those black people built the country for them. And then America's going to disappear. It's going to be wiped off the map. I personally think it's going to be a super volcano that's under Yellowstone that's going to erupt and take out the whole of America.
Oh, so you physically think it's not just the demise of Trump, that the whole country, it's all going to be swallowed up?
Well, I don't know if you're aware of, I don't know if you're aware that 2017 there was an eclipse that went across America. Right, went through 7 places called Jerusalem or Salem, and it hovered for a slightly longer amount of time over a particular spot, and then 7 years later, another eclipse went over that particular spot again. Okay, and that spot is the New Madrid fault line, which is connected to the Yellowstone fault line. And under Yellowstone Park is a super volcano, which they've already said, if that goes up, it's going to take 3/4 of America with it immediately.
And there's also they've made a stupid Netflix movie called Palmer. I think the Norwegians made a movie about the the shift that's going to happen. Half of Mallorca, is it, or Tenerife, one of the islands over there, is going to collapse, and there's going to be massive demise. I think on the east coast there's going to be tsunamis and stuff like that. But yeah, Yellowstone Park. Yeah. Wow.
Well, I'm just going by what Ezra says, that he says the strongest head is going to disappear without a fight, die in its bed, essentially.
And if that does happen, I mean, gosh, well, I know he wants to be the global leader what's he saying yesterday? I was watching him. He wants to be known for peace and unity. Ha ha. But if he does get wiped off, or they all get wiped off, is that going to cause chaos in the rest of the world? I wonder. And what does the Bible say? Or should we leave that for another?
Well,
should we leave that for another chat? I'm only just thinking because we could go on for another hour, but we've gone on for an hour, and I know people will watch 20-30 minutes of it, and I think there's so much more information. Should we come back and do another one about this? And
sure,
if you're happy to, yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'll wind. Yeah, go on. If there's anything you want to say before I say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, I do have a video where I cover some of this. I've got two. One's called "Why Great Britain is no longer Great or British," and another one that covers a prophecy, just called "Prophecy." So they're on my channel, D Murphy 25.
Can you ping them over to me, and then I'll add them in the description? If you do that now, rather than me writing it all down, ping them over, then I'll add it, and anything that you want to, how people can find you, and your website, and I can put that on the bottom of this, so people can contact you directly and get more amazing information. I just love it. It's just so interesting. Very exciting time to be on this planet. It is, if you know what's going on, or you're
really
learning.
Is.
Yeah,
this is the best time to be.
It is, really. It's all happening, but you've got to do the research. You've got to listen to this information, and if you don't believe it, go and do some digging and ask some questions, and I'll come back to you, or Dave will. So if you are watching this, thank you very much. Do subscribe, do share, do comment, do like all those things to get more information. And pop over to see allegedly Dave Murphy on his channels. Yeah, we'll put a link. Have you got YouTube channels or websites? I don't know what you've got these days. You're all over the place. I know that.
Yeah, my channel's D Murphy 25. I've got a website that's in a bad way at the moment called allegedlydave.com.
Right. Okay. Cool. And so ping those links over. I'll add them on the thingy. And thank you so much, and I'll get in touch maybe when I'm back in the UK next week, when our because we did have quite a lot of freezing, and I don't know how good the sound was, but I'll contact you when I'm back next week and we'll do another one. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Cool,
Enjoy the rest of your stay. Yeah. Lots of love to you. You take care. Enjoy some sunshine before you come back to Blighty. Take care.
I will.
Bye.
You take care. Bye bye.
Bye now.